Good evening, everybody, and you're welcome to the very first edition of Nkata for 2025. For those who are coming for the very first time, we are very welcome, and for our returning guests, you're very, very welcome. So, sorry for starting this a little behind schedule. We've started in earnest and would continue, very quickly as possible until we get to the end of the program. So I welcome all of you. You're very welcome to yet another edition of Nkata Umwibe. Of course, Nkata did not hold in January because every January we believe that Ndi Igbo are probably still in their villages, especially in the first week. We believe that Ndi Igbo are still in their villages, and then we allow them to enjoy the Christmas break to the fullest before coming back to resume in February. So you're very welcome. And let me take, a few minutes to acknowledge dignitaries here present. I acknowledge everyone who has come so far. Chief Ben Etiaba, you're very welcome, sir. I welcome members of the community of people with special abilities. I thank also our partners, Ford Foundation, Afia TV, Urban Radio, Solid FM, Enugu Sports Club, Signature TV, Nzapi, who's our branding partner. We thank all our partners and all who are here present. We also acknowledge members of, or students rather, from Model Comprehensive College, Claret Academy. Who else can I see? Every other person who has come so far, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for coming, and this promises to be an exciting edition. Of course, Nkata editions are very, very exciting, and this promises to be as exciting or even more exciting than other editions. We have a very powerful speaker who will give us a very powerful speech in a short while. But before then, I'll call on the director of the center to come tell us a bit about the Center for Memories and, also maybe tell us why we are here. So I'll call on the director of the center, Maazi Ihanyi Iboko, to come up here and tell us about the Center for Memories. Let's put our hands together for him as he comes up. Thank you.
A very good evening to everybody. Now from the board in management of the Center for Memories, Janabata Madanini na Nkata Umibe in February 2025. The center, Egbe Bere Center in 2017, as a place where the journey and the experiences of Ndi Igbo will be documented. And since 2017, we've been trying to live up to that mandate through the programs and activities that we do at the center. Nkata Umwibe is one of those activities. And since 2018, May 2018, with the support of partners like Enugu Sports Club and Nkata Umwibe we've been doing in 2018. Until now, we've grown into have a long list of other partners, Afia TV, and this edition, Ford Foundation, but those who we're now support trying to continue to have this conversation that elevates thought leadership in Igbo society. And I'd like to thank people like Chief Ben Etiaba, who has also been a strong support to the center since Nkata Umwibe started. And the whole list of other supporters like Afia TV, Chief Emeka Mba, and I'm seeing my boss coming, Mr. Nkemweke. I have to recognize him, our board member of the Center for Memories. Yeah, so who has been very supportive in the work we do at the Center for Memories. And I can't thank enough the schools who are represented, the Queen's Model and Claret Academy, for their support in this edition of Nkata Umwibe. They've been here since 12 o'clock. They had the mentorship session with the speaker, and that mentorship session helps in a very big way. Like some of the things we discussed today, help them to understand the importance of things around us and the relevance in the scheme of things, especially in the broader society. So, and I think I have to give way so that when you get So I'm going to hand over to Mr. Chukwudi Otazi so that when we invite our speaker to come and do justice to today's conversation. Thank you and have a lovely evening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Director. Just like he said, while he was making that short presentation, one of the members of the board of the Center for Memories, Mr. Nkemweke, walked in. Please, let's give him a round of applause. Thank you so much for coming, sir. All right, quickly, I'm going to call on another staff of the center, the programs person, Mwada Ifoma Namani, to tell us about Nkata so far, the journey so far with Nkata Umube, our past speakers, and also introduce the speaker for today. Let's give her a round of applause, please.
Igbo mamanu. Ọbụkwa ndị Igbo n'ebe Igbo mamanu. Igbo kwenu. Mụọnụ. Zọọnụ. Kwezonu. Ụmụ akwụkwọ adịghị ekwe ma unu abụrụ ndị Igbo. Ụmụ akwụkwọ Igbo kwenu. Obi bụ anyị sọsọ aṅụrị ịnabata unu na nkata umibe nke February 2025. Onye isi Maazị anyị Igboko emego the introduction, ọ kọwagoro anyị ihe center na-eme, ọrụ center na-arụ and the journey so far. Mana, what I'm going to do this evening is to talk specifically about our journey so far with Nkata Umibe. Like he said during the introduction, Nkata started in 2018, and it was born out of a desire to provide a platform for conversation. Everybody ga na-akpa nkata dịka ụmụ nwanne dịka ndị Igbo about ihe ndị ahụ metụtara, ihe ndị ahụ gbasara anyị dịka ndị Igbo. Kedu those critical issues that affect us as Igbo people, that affect the Southeast region? And then what can we as individuals, ọ bụrụzi nke government ma ịmagoni inepụ anya n'ebe ndị ọzọ, no, we, myself and yourself, ndị na-abịa this Nkata, what can we do to move the region forward, to contribute to the society? So I bido na May 2018, and our inaugural speaker was Professor Chidi Odinkalu, and he spoke on Igbo Kuni. It was a very rousing topic. It was a way of inspiring the Igbo to rise up. Now they are the sleeping giants, and it's time for us to wake up and take our place, on the world stage. Then after him, we had Professor Okendibe, and then we had Dikechukwu Merije, we had Okechukwu. And in October of 2018, we had our very first female speaker, Chidi Odua, and she also happened to be the youngest, at the time. Although after that, we've had other younger speakers. And then 2019, we also continued the conversation. We had speakers like Chinenye Mbauzuku, Dr. Joe Abba. We had even Mr. Frank Nweke Jr. and Chidi Ajere, who owns God is Good Motors. And he came to speak on succession in business, how Igbo businesses can succeed or can thrive beyond their founders. Then in 2020, we had only 2 sessions of Nkata Umibe before COVID struck. So we had Chief Ben Itava here, who spoke on Ijelo Obodozi. He spoke on servant leadership, right? And then we also had King Silieze, the CEO of Tennessee, Genesis Tech Hub. And then he spoke on Akuruno. And then COVID now struck, and for almost a year, we could not gather as Ndi Igbo. And it was a big problem for us because I bundeji Igbo wee mari magon ufonya dey take a decision for ora. Obu na enwe ihe need ka akpa I ga-abịa together. Everybody will bring out their own opinion, and everybody's opinion is respected in the community. So it was a big problem for us because we could not gather. But in December of 2018, we had one more session, and that was with Professor Osita Obu. And then 2021, we also could not hold Nkata Umibe because of COVID, but also because of funding. Then in 2022, we had 11 sessions of Nkata Umibe. We had people like Professor Chaluchi Onyemelukwe. We had Chief Emeka Mba, the CEO of Afia TV. We had Obiasika. and so many other very wonderful speakers, each touching on, different aspects of our life and our identity as Ndi Igbo, and touching on some of those issues as Ndi Igbo. Then 2023 also, we could not hold Nkata Umibe, also because of funding. Then this 2024, last year, we were very lucky and privileged to get a funding from Ford Foundation. Please, let's put our hands together for Ford, because without Ford Foundation, we would not be here. So Ford gave us the support that we needed to kickstart Nkata again. And we started in November 2024. So we started with Ezenia Ed Kiazo. And then after that, we had Abalanze Chikema Doeke. And, January, we don't usually hold Nkata Umibe in January, because now everybody can on a village, na Nkwocha, na Tabacha, and all that. And we don't want to interrupt your enjoyment. So we don't usually hold Nkata in January. So this February, we're here together again. And today we're going to be speaking on a very interesting topic. So when we hear science and technology, most times our minds technology ndiocha, we don't even think that our own indigenous knowledge systems can find application in science and technology. Because our forefathers made their own science and their own technology and their own knowledge system, their medicine and arts and everything. So I now say, how can we position our own knowledge system to stand side by side? Don't imagine we title our theme for this month, Egbe Bere Ugo Bere. How can our own technology and our science and technology stand side by side? How do we include it? How do we make technology more inclusive of, different knowledge systems, including our own? Instead of looking outside, so we're looking outside for solutions when those solutions lie here with us. So we're going to be having our speaker today, a very wonderful man. So he's been here almost all day. He just finished the mentorship session with the secondary school students. So he's been here since, having a very wonderful conversation. I wish all of us were here earlier in the day, because the conversation that that we explored with him, we had the relevance for everybody. So Mr. Ugeze, as he prefers to be called, he's so many things. So each time I introduce our Nkata speaker, I always say there are many things rolled into one, and that's because it is true. He is so many things, but then he also prefers not to be attached to any designation. Like when we asked him, okay, what do you want? So usually when we write our speakers' name, we put something under their name, maybe what they are good at or what they do or anything. He said, no, don't put anything under my name, just Mr. Ugeze. He's such an unassuming person. He's so much, and then he also is so self-effacing. Like he doesn't want to brag, or he doesn't want to be seen as so much, even though he is. So to introduce our speaker, so he is a mechanical and a software engineer. He's also the founder of Atlantis Research Center here in Enugu and Automobile Laboratories. He's also the author of some books like Get Smart, and then the one that I'm holding here, Python and the Rainmaker. So perhaps when he starts his presentation, he might also, tell us a bit about the book and what inspired it. And the book is available outside, please, for sale for 15,000 naira. So Mr. Ugeze, with his engineering expertise and his passion for indigenous knowledge system, is set to discuss with us or impart us with the knowledge of how our Igbo cosmology, how our indigenous science and technology, our ordinary, can find application in science and technology. So ladies and gentlemen, with a resounding round of applause, please let's put our hands together for Mr. Ugeze as he comes up to make his presentation. Thank you.
let me start by saying I'm actually happy that some people even turned up at all, because most people do not really appreciate some of these local things because of the bias that have been generated by, at times, the negative application of whatever we know as indigenous knowledge. So I'll first say that my topic today is application of Igbo cosmology in science and technology. Now, I would say that I have some objectives to achieve, at least what I wish I could achieve in this discussion. The first one is to provide all of us here a technical basis for understanding the Igbo cosmology, or what you may call the Igbo worldview, the Igbo point of view. Because most of the time when this thing is talked about, it's talked purely on a cultural level, as though the whole thing is about to wear traditional clothes, to waoji, and the rest of it. And I noticed that a lot of us, particularly in the IT engineering industry, are one of the group that can make the greatest impact if they can be drawn in to look at the culture from a completely different viewpoint, so that they can begin to generate new ideas. Unfortunately, these same very people are the people who have been so westernized that they don't even give it a shot. They have concluded that it's either fetish or local or non-progressive. Again, that's based on the fact that a lot of people who are interested in this thing are usually more on the negative side. You hear about people who naturally go ego, or dish, so, with that kind of thing, people are not too comfortable looking at it at all. So because of that, we lose a lot of treasure, because there has been nobody who was able to straddle both the art, culture, engineering, and science side. So maybe it's just a pure case of being fortunate that I happened to cut across several disciplines in the course of my work. Now, if I provide this basis, at least as you live, you will not be so misinformed. I would say, as you go, you begin to look at this thing differently. That's what I wish to achieve, that your perspective will change a little. Even if you're a hardliner, you're going to say, maybe there's something in this thing that I didn't see before. If I can get to do that in this session, I would have actually succeeded in what I came for. So, but most of these things can't be theoretical, so I have to also show some demonstrations of some kind of application of what I'm talking about. So that's actually what I intend to achieve in this small session. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is a technical overview of Igbo cosmology. Please, I don't know, I may sound at times a bit scientific, but it's because I really don't know how else to explain it. So some things may not be very clear, but I'll try and explain it as much as I can. And I'm also going to come from the viewpoint of mathematics. Please, when I say mathematics, don't look at it the normal way people look at it. I'm saying mathematics because technically the only truth we can say for now is mathematical truth. Truth, mathematics is about the only thing that goes from logic to logic to logic, so that you get to a point where you say, this is absolutely true. I'll give an example. If you wanted to carpet this room and somebody took a measurement and said that the area is 22 meters squared, I can send that data anywhere in the world and they cut the carpet, and if they place it here to be a perfect match. Most other forms of thought are not that accurate. That's what I mean by mathematical truth. So most things have been invented because people were able to postulate accurate mathematical facts about it many years before the physical thing was found. So at times in trying to reconstruct some of these our Igbo cosmology, one is actually best not to just listen to stories, but to look at the underlying mathematical truth. Unfortunately, Even mathematics is based on some things that you cannot prove. That is the nature of life. Mathematics is based on things called axioms. Axioms are things that we accept as true, but we can't prove it. That is called mathematical axioms. That is the basis on which mathematics is built. You accept certain things as true, but you can't prove it. Like in the past, Dalton, in Dalton atomic theory, said that the world is made of atoms. That you can keep breaking things down and cutting it into pieces, but you get to a point where you can no longer cut that piece. That smallest part you cannot cut is called the atom. That's basically Dalton's atomic theory. And that the whole world of Newtonian physics that we know, from aircraft flying in the air, to submarines going underwater, to missiles going to another country, all of them are based on Dalton's atomic theory. Now, nobody can prove that if you keep cutting something, that you get to a point where you can't cut it anymore. It's just an axiom. Do you understand? It's like something somebody came up, you can't prove it, but it's a good basis for thought. You can start from there. Technically, the axiom doesn't even have to be right. So long as your logic is consistent, the axiom will probably hold. Now, many years later, Albert Einstein came and said no such thing. That even electrons are not even what you think. That light can be both particle and matter, can be wave and this. And then that's a completely different axiom, which resulted in what you call quantum mechanics, without which you can't have the computer, you can't have the phone, you can't have the satellite and the microprocessor. So now, it's also possible that this axiom is not correctly true. But if you build a new axiom, you can build a complete set of things on it. Of course, each axiom has its limitations. So the world, according to science, is what is called discretized. It can be broken up into pieces. And these pieces do not relate to each other. There's no connection between a tree and a kola nut. They are totally different entities, and they cannot affect one another. Each other, as it were. So that is what these axioms are. So the axioms of modern science also says that the universe, life, and existence consist of measurable and observable things. I'm talking about the basis of our science. If something is not measurable and observable, it does not exist. So you can understand why scientists say, we don't believe in spirits. We don't believe in God. Now, when they say that, a lot of scientists believe in God. But they are saying, so long as you're talking science, God does not exist. Your belief in God is personal. It's not scientific. Because science says it has to be measurable and it has to be observable. Unfortunately, we can't do that. Now, this same thing now applies that, technically speaking, dreams do not exist. Dreams do not exist because you can't observe it and you can't measure it. I agree that you can put like an EEG machine or a CAT scan on your brain, and while you're dreaming, the thing can read electrical signals and plot it on a graph and say, there's a cranial activity happening in this brain. But they cannot from there know what you're dreaming. So you can't tell them that you went to the moon in the dream because there's nothing to measure that. So from that point of view, yes, they can see activity, but they don't know it's a dream. It could have been anything anyway. You were hearing voices, they didn't hear it. What they are measuring didn't actually connect to that. So dreams do not exist. I'm saying this thing to show you the limitations of even our current scientific axioms. So you notice that then another thing that the science does for us in terms of their axiom is Newton. Every cause must have a natural effect. Every effect has a natural cause. You can't tell me that something just happened. That's out of the point. Or maybe a ghost appeared here. Or your great-grandfather showed up in a room and told you something. How do you measure that? How do you observe that under scientific condition? These things mean they don't exist. And truly, they don't exist. So if you notice what the science or modern science does is, if you have a very complex problem like reality, what you want to do is to simplify it. Remove anything that will cause confusion so that you can focus on the most basic elements. Those basic elements you can build on. Now, so long as you can do something useful with it, I think it's good enough. But it doesn't mean that that's the only view of reality that is correct. Because in a sense, there's really no correct view. As you change your axioms, you discover different things. As you believe that light can exist as both wave and particle, everything changes. The kind of places you can go, the things you can imagine changes. So the importance of axioms is not really, it has a much bigger impact than most people think. Basically, what is your base assumption? Now, if we have different base assumptions, we are going to find different things. And we're going to meet different limitations. But for somebody to say that your assumptions are clueless, that you don't know what you're talking about, because it doesn't match my assumption, is wrong. Even if you couldn't do anything with your own set of axioms, that is just a limitation of your ability. It has nothing to do with that the axiom is incorrect. Now, I've given you like a brief of our science as an engineer, what we know. But among these things I've said, let's look at the fundamental axiom of Igbo cosmology. The fundamental axiom of Igbo cosmology is that the universe is interconnected at all levels. Everything is connected with everything. You notice that this is a far more complex problem to solve. When you say it's like a network of network of network of network. If you were to draw like a diagram connecting everything to everything, what you have is a total mess of lines. In fact, you have an infinity of lines. It is a very difficult process. But that is the Igbo worldview, but not just the Igbo worldview. Several ancient worldviews, the Egyptians, the Mesoamericans, the people in the Indus Valley, more than 5,000 years ago, that was the view. That was the view that made people raise stones to the pyramid. That was the view that made people build some crazy temples in India. That was the view that made most of what we call the ancient wonders we can't figure out. Bend stone, move tons of rock, all those things. Even till today, nobody knows what it is, how they did it. Because our axioms are now different. So we have disconnected even from pursuing knowledge along those axes. So these things are very important to understand because it gives you a framework to even be able to analyze things when people say certain things. So the next thing is like, what are the consequences of this connectivity? If we look at it from the Igbo worldview, what are the consequences? The consequences means that unrelated things can affect one another. Meaning that I can use kola nut and break it and rain will fall. Remember, I'm talking maths now. I'm saying if we go with this axiom, then this is a possibility. I'm not saying you can do it, but within this worldview, catching a chameleon, cutting it in half and pouring palm oil on it can cause thunder. Now, you may not understand the detail because you're not the expert in the worldview, but that is the worldview. Worldview says, yes, it's legal. It can be done. That's why at times we find mathematical basis for ideas and then understand how these ideas are formed and then understand our limitations and what we are able to do and what we are not able to do. So another consequence of this worldview is that information can be obtained about anything from any object. In fact, what the quantum physicists call it is that the world is now called a hologram. A hologram, it's the science part, where I take a photograph of you. Any part of that photograph I take, I can create the whole of you with that photograph. This is not science fiction. Holograms were done in 1942-43 after the quantum physicists changed their axiom. Holograms became possible. Basically, you can project a man on this stage and he's floating and talking, yet the man is not there. A piece of the guy is ready to reconstruct him. It's a kind of digital DNA where you pick something and can use it to create the whole thing. So the human being on his own is a hologram because you can pick a DNA and a stem cell and practically create another human being. That is theoretically. It fits into that modern worldview called quantum physics. So quantum physics is so abstract and obtuse that even the originators are confused. They tell you, we don't really understand this thing. It's just that it works. If anybody says he understands quantum physics, you suspect him for being mad because he really doesn't. He says things he doesn't understand, but they work. But then when you apply these things to us, everybody says we're crazy. Prove it. Not everything is proven. Now, another thing is like having Igbo worldview of interconnectivity means that you now have what is called an extended cause-effect chain. If you look at Newtonian physics, somebody will say, if you hit a hammer on a wall, it will break. That's okay. That's cause and effect, action and reaction and equal opposite. But the ancient worldview will tell you what made the man hit the hammer on the wall. It's like a second level differential. You differentiated the first problem correctly, but step to the second level. What made the man? The man said, I thought it myself. Somebody says, no, I made you think about breaking the wall. You wasn't even your thought in the first place. In fact, you appear to a wall and you say, it's your opinion. This is what interconnectivity as an axiom basis allows for. We are not talking about whether it exists or not. We're saying these are the possibilities inherent in this worldview. So it's good to understand it from that basis so that things are a bit clearer. Now, in this worldview, if everything is interconnected, then it means that there are active agents that in this worldview that include your emotional and psychological states, anger, fear, jealousy, greed, spoken words, libation, incantations, curses, and even wishes, all become active agents in the worldview. If everything is interconnected, then my spoken words can have effect. In fact, there's an ancient Yoruba art, martial art, called Aki, for people who had learned about Yoruba, where, when I mean ancient, it was still available in 1900, where two people are fighting by speaking words to each other. He will throw words at you and the thing will hit you and you fall down. Now, these things are not possible in the Western worldview. But those things are possible by that shift in axiom. Now, it is why I'm saying this thing is like, how do we become creative if our imagination has nothing to work on? If we can't just believe the impossible and believe that things can happen if we don't have a basis. So that's why I'm trying to explain, at least theoretically, that these things are based on certain views of the world. The limitations still exist, just like limitations of any axiom. Now, see how science progresses. It goes from axioms, things you cannot prove, but you just accept it to be true. Then it goes to conjectures, where you propose something via intuition, which you think is true. So you can hear about the Goldman conjecture, this conjecture in mathematics. That is, let's say, somebody said like, twin prime numbers, for example, are infinite. These are conjectures. That we cannot find two prime numbers side by side. We can keep finding it along the whole number line. They tell it is a conjecture. It's just in your head. You can prove it for 1 million prime numbers. That doesn't make it true. Because you have not given us enough to say this thing is true for all cases. Now, when you begin to say that something is true for all cases, that is where the mathematician says we now have a theorem. So you go from an axiom to conjecture, then to theorem. Now, when you get to the point of theorem, everything becomes possible. So when the law of flotation was discovered, when you discover law of flotation, you can float a city in the sea. You don't guess. You can stay in your lab, draw up the whole city, and put it at the center of Atlantic Ocean and move it. When the theorems of aerodynamics are discovered, you can put any weight in the air. You can actually hang this building and it will be flying at 800 kilometers per hour. You couldn't easily do it with a conjecture. It is when these theorems have been fully established after many years of failures and correction where you can say, this is possible. So these are how we are looking at it now. So this is our relationship. Now, like I said, this relationship of Igbo worldview is not specific to Igbos. Because at times Igbos claim, oh, it's us. No. It appeared there was a time in history when this knowledge was more universal, but as things started going bad, only people in remote locations retained some semblances of that knowledge. And most of them don't even know it. It's not as though they retained it and know everything about it. No. Even the people who are custodians of our culture know almost less than 10% of the significance and the capabilities embedded in it. But why the culture is important is it helps keep the thing alive till the right set of people will come up to be able to unearth it again. That is why all this oral history is necessary. Myths, legend, just keep saying it. So long as you don't stop saying it, we are safe. One of the best things our grandparents did when the white men came was that they insisted on retaining our local names. Had they not done that, we won't be in this seminar to start with. That little decision saved us as a whole. Where, because that name remained, people can now begin to go back. So even when you look at simple names like Osita, most people don't even realize what it means. Osita de Bama. It's not just Osita. Osita. Tabo, today is early. We can always restart. These names have meaning embedded in them to help reactivate a people that may have lost it. And you'll be surprised that the ancient people were not that stupid. Like in the Igbo cosmology, there are 4 cycles that occur. There are 4 cycles. These cycles are called Oga. Enwe Ogaka. Enwe Ogaka. Ogazi. Then enwe Ogaun and Ogazi. We have Aka, Aze, Agu, and Ogaun. These are 4 epochs or cycles that could last up to 2,000 years. When one goes, another one starts. So during the Aka period, the people of that period are called Omu Aka. Not children. It's children of the Oga age. That's what Japan Omu Aka. Then during the Azi period, they are called Omu Azi. This is the children of the Azi age. Now we are entering Omu Agu. Agu is where the crazy people show up. You know what I mean? So this is the Omu Agu period. Then after the Omu Agu, we now have Omu Awu, the period of enlightenment. Now this is our cosmology. Of course you say it's an axiom, whatever, but whoever configured it that way can say we have moved from one epoch to another. And of course, you can see names like Azi Ka Iwe. The Azi people are not the good guys. It's like, when things really got bad, this is now. So we are moving to the Agu, where we are beginning to reactivate our capabilities. We are beginning to unearth things that we have left behind. The crazy people are back online trying to do crazier things. So that is the Omuagu period. So you can see that there is a pattern to this thing. It's not like random. Even when you look at the cycles of wealth in life, somebody can become extremely rich, a billionaire. After like 20, 30 years, his children will be paupers. Now, people who knew his children will not believe how rich their parents were. They will say, these guys are useless, they don't have anything. But that's not true. It's just that the cycle, at least in our cosmology, had turned. And that's it. They have taken for granted things they had, and they lost it. So they're going to pay the price, go through a period, go through a period of rejuvenation, and then come back. Just like the sun goes and then comes back. Because a lot of these people look at these things, even from our nature, and pull it up. So even our Igbo cosmology is not known by us. We just have fragments of information sprinkled around, which correlates with fragments of information in other places. It is not necessarily unique, but we may have unique parts of it that we preserved, that other ancient cultures didn't preserve. But there was an ancient system of knowledge that I would say in those days produced supermen. The modern system of knowledge produces super machines. The men now are the weakest ever in terms of capability. We say, there are no men. It's actually accurate. The kind of men of the old, people who can fly in the air, true or false, however you look at it, even the thought of those men have escaped us. You know, you hear it sometimes in the Bible, the ancient men of old, you know, the guys that did wonderful things. It was a common thing. It wasn't peculiar to us. But I think we have retained certain aspects of this information. So I'm just trying to do this preamble so that we can just have a common ground to look at the issues. So what I'm going to be discussing next is the applications of this worldview. And I'm going to discuss it on 3 levels. At one level, it's purely entrepreneurial. You don't need to know anything. You're just trying to say, refocus on your culture a bit. See certain things you can convert into useful products and use it. So we're going to see the possibilities in it and people who have actually tried and done something with it. Unfortunately, because I'm in the IT industry, the guy that even did anything that was actually like upscale within CBD happened to be a Yoruba guy, not even an Igbo guy. He developed a font, a complete font used by Google. You can see it in Google fonts. A font family that is based purely on CBD. Now, the young man said he got to know about CBD, the ancient Igbo writing, in 2019. And the thing inspired him to redesign the fonts in the computer, and they call the font Ago font. So if you type agodisplay.com on your, if you have a phone or what, agodisplay.com, you will see the CBD font. So it means that now you can, yeah, please, the next slide. Yeah, this is the CBD font. If you look at the THE, they are embellished with CBD motifs. The ancient Igbo writing, under the moon, you can see it. All these are CBD writings. The ancient Graham way the masquerade used to communicate. It was a communication method used by the people who were initiated into the cult. When I use cult, it's almost like saying you got initiated into professorship. Nobody should look at it negatively, please. So this is like leopard dances. But the guy is actually showing the font. So the next slide, please. It's showing yeah, you can see it. Now, these fonts now mean that we as Igbo people, graphic designers, if we want to do something that has to do Igbo, you might as well just load the CBD font and use it to design your flyer, your motif. And economically, I'm not there to know how much Google or whoever sponsored this had paid for it. Because from now on, as you use them, the guys that did this one get richer. So it's not even about cultural export. It's about cultural transformation. Somebody just does something and you begin to see millions of dollars associated with it. If you put this thing in a movie, you're going to pay movie rights. If you put it in a magazine, you have to pay rights. So it's almost like the guy just put a funnel and can siphon as much money as he can over a long period. And it's for us as Igbos to say, fine, if somebody had done the job, we might as well use it. Yeah, so if I'm doing anything Igbo culture, I'm going to use Ago font. Whether I like it or not, that's what I'm going to use. Because even though I may not be getting the money, I am promoting the culture. And then more people are inspired to move in that direction. So that is the power of that. Now, I'm talking level 1 is entrepreneur, just pure business. You look at the culture and say, what can I take from this culture rather than looking outwards that I can convert into a useful product? You don't have to be a spiritualist. You don't have to be a culture person. You don't have to even like the culture. But the thing is available. So the next slide is a more interesting one. This is the Ikenga GT supercar built in 1969 by an African-American. Obviously, he has never been to Africa. The Ikenga GT supercar built by David Gittins in 1969. He used to be a photographer for the Car and Driver magazine for people who actually are into cars. And this guy was so radical at that point that this was beyond state of the art. That is the Ikenga GT supercar. But the problem is not the car. Because what he did was, he said, if you look at the top view of this vehicle, it's actually designed on the Ikenga. The top view is a representation of the Ikenga. If you had like a top view of it, that was his basis. And I didn't put enough pictures of the car, but even the way the car opens, it almost opens like a Formula One vehicle. So you can see adaptations that were done from this design to what you may call a modern design. Now, the next slide shows the guy himself. When he did this thing, I'm not sure it was up to 30. That's the guy, David Gittins. He's like an Igbo guy. He finally did a rotocopter that is in the Smithsonian Museum in America. But the important thing is I wanted to read from my book a statement by this man to understand what, when we talk about inspiration and axioms, the assumptions. So please, let me, can you just read it for me because I may not be able to read it. He was trying to explain the concept and where he drew his inspiration from. And that was my interest because it's quite easy for somebody who is not a researcher to say they can say Igbo people build car. No, Igbo people didn't build car. This car uses a Chevrolet engine. It's a GM Chevy small block V8. Nothing to do with him. He didn't build it. But the conception of the vehicle, he didn't build the chassis. I think Fisher Body, one of those chassis people, built it. But the conception of the idea came from a source that was in Igbo cosmology. And I believe, though, when these slaves are renamed, he's from Igbo land. It's natural. So if not, he couldn't have linked that as his own primary source of inspiration. Please, can you read it?
All right. First, let me introduce you to the essence of Ikenga. The name Ikenga has its origin in the Igbo culture of Eastern Nigeria and has an important connection to the spiritual and physical dimensions of the culture and individual. It is timeless and it's perceived as a psychic force that underscores success. There is the interpretation that Ikenga is the destiny, which as an unborn soul works out for itself with the help of its chi before it incarnates in the physical realm. In this case, the creation and consecration of Ikenga would be the process of activating this identity and living it out.
Okay, let me explain it because I just wanted to read the exact words when he was actually handing over the rotocopter many years later. You see, I said that the Ikenga, a lot of us don't really follow it. It depends on where you're coming from, right? In Igbo land, now, he being somebody who had been more interested in it, of course, knows more than me. So that's why I refer to him. He said that this is a destiny which an unborn soul works out with his chi before he incarnates into the physical realm. Meaning that there's a purpose you came to this world which you're bound to forget. Now, as you grow and meet difficulties, you may not know what it is. But you get to a point in life when you consecrate an Ikenga and every morning you go and look at it, it's almost like saying, what the hell did I come here for? I've asked myself that question many times. Is it this punching computer keyboard that I'm made for? Anybody who hadn't felt frustration at times from this meaninglessness, I don't know whether maybe it's just a robot. There's a point you get in life, most things actually become meaningless. Particularly if you have succeeded partially. A failure doesn't have a problem because he can only say, I don't have money. So he has something to pursue. But when you are unlucky, like Michael Jackson, maybe by the time you're 9 years, you have made more money than I'll make, even if I live 9 times. Even if I reincarnated 9 times. But somebody like Michael Jackson had made more money than me. Now, when you hit that kind of money at 19, what the hell do you do with your life? You see the person just meet a void. And then you hear, oh, the guy is into drugs. Oh, the guy doesn't know what he's doing. He is searching for meaning. And it's not easy for somebody who is not at his level to understand. So they're saying the Ikenga is this destiny which an unborn soul worked out for himself with his chi, meaning that there's a prior decision you made before you came into this world. Yeah, it's an axiom, right? You may say it's not true, but it's irrelevant. For people that it works for people that understand it, it works for them. So every day at a certain age, ipiti Ikengagi. That's why they say, if there's a war in the ancient Igbo land and a man's house is burning, the only thing he wants to take is Ikenga. It's like something that is psychically connected to him to remind him of why he came. Meaning that he will keep posing that question over and over and over till his subconscious activates. And he now knows, yeah, I think I'm in for this. Now, like I said, it doesn't matter. It's not about belief. It's just about this is the worldview. And this is what supported great men in those days. That an Abraham man can leave his village and go through the bush with the lions and leopards and lions and this, and trek more than, if I go to another city like Benin and do something and go home. Most of us can't do it, even with a GPS phone. If I drop you in the bush, you get lost. Fear won't even agree you to move in the night. This guy will move through and come back. So there is nobody in this our current era that comes half as close to any of those men. So if their belief system gave them that capability, and our belief system makes us dependent on phone, and then I tell somebody, I think that one makes more sense, and they says I'm fetish. Then I know it doesn't make sense. So you understand where that's why I said I want to form a foundation for this discussion so that it won't be like we're all talking in the abstract. So this is the level at which I'm looking at. This is design. I didn't say he did an engine, but he did such a revolutionary work that formed the basis for future design. So you begin to look at the latest Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Bugattis. You begin to see motifs coming from designs like this, almost like 40, 50 years later. So the next slide is that's what you may call pedestrian African objects. Look at the first one. It's actually a comb. Mvo. For some of you young boys that have forgotten what comb is. Mvo. Now, because of our spirituality, everything is integrated. A comb is not just a comb. So there's a symbolism attached to that comb, which some of us, like as we are now, have forgotten. I don't know what the symbolism is, but there's a symbolism attached to that comb. Then you look at the precision of carvers, who I have met because my father is a sculptor, so I understand these things very well. If you see where the guy that's carving this thing in the ancient time, he's almost in a trance. He's like in auto mode. His hand is just moving, as though there's a picture in his head his hand is representing. When he finishes it, the proportion is perfect. He didn't use any 3D software. He didn't use any measuring tool. He will use this thing and carve this. But when you go through the guild of carvers, Omenka, it's not just a physical art. There's a physical aspect of the art, like in the Opozu, and there's a spiritual aspect of the art. The master person is the person that had fused both. Even in the dibia, there are two types of dibia, Agu dibia and Nwa dibia. Most people you call dibia, but Nwa dibia, they are not dibias. I will also explain the process of making an Agu dibia in some of the communities. But it's not what I will say now because we're still at level 1 of what you can do. Meaning, if I'm into 3D animation, computer graphics, character development, game development, these things can form a basis for my character. I may not be able to even conceive of it, but by looking at our ancient artifacts, that comb can be a character for an alien. If you zoom in well, it could be anything. Your imagination is your limit. You look at it, you figure out what you want to do with it. I don't know what you're going to do with it. But if these young people begin to refocus and look at those things again, and say, what can I do with this? What can I do with that? What can I do with that? Then they would have something that their imagination can work on. Not just telling somebody, be creative. How can you be creative with an old axiom? You can't be creative. You have to change your base assumptions if you want to do new things. So a lot of them can't be creative. They can't design new things. But if you give them a new basis, they'll begin to think differently. And they can come up with things that even I cannot imagine. So the next slide. The next slide, please. So the level 2 of this, that we're talking at the level 1, we're looking at it just purely entrepreneurial. You look at what is in the system, you look at your culture, you say, what the hell can I do with this? I don't need to know what they mean. I don't know what they're designing for. Like, where can I apply this in my work? I can do a water bottle that looks like pawpaw. I can do, if I'm a designer, I'm baking bottles. I can do a shoe that looks like whatever. That's what I'm saying. You look at the culture and see what you can adapt. That's basically it. But at the level 2, we're looking at product development. That is, you're now saying people that do something, people that build things, people that work on components, people that design systems. So the first thing is like, I will go to talk about these bio devices and organic devices at level 3. Because at level 3, we're not talking about serious R&D, that's in research and development. So at this level, we're saying we can look at how to use some of the things we have as actual engineering or products that can solve problems in our system. So let's look at the next slide. The next slide, please. Yeah, this slide is actually, I took this shot directly from my office. And of course, those artifacts you see also came from my office. It's like I just used what I had to project there. Now, this slide is a series of bio batteries we've been developing for the past like 18 months. The interesting thing with these batteries is done with onugbu and cocoyam. No kidding. And we've run experiments where this thing can turn on a blue LED for 47 days non-stop. But most people that come to my office see it actually on. They ask, how many days is it now? And I tell them, it's okay, what are you guys doing about this thing? I say, see, we still have issues. We're still trying to deal with current density problems, the voltage drops, and all sorts of technical things. But the fundamental thing I'm saying is that we've been able to look at something and then move it from what it was supposed to be because of a new set of assumptions to another thing. Now, imagine that if I say this thing, I say, oh, maybe you guys are smart. No, I consulted with DBS. Yeah, it's funny. You ask the guy, see, guy, I want to do something, but I'm a bit confused. And he says things that don't really make sense. Now, onugbu na cocoyam abroy, whatever that means, I don't know. But, I cannot interpret it. Maybe they're positive and negative. Maybe they're not friends, meaning that they repel. I don't know. However I do it, it doesn't matter. But the thing triggers you to begin to look at things from a totally different viewpoint. And then when we started this experiment, we were barely getting 5 millivolts from the battery. We need to load about 160 cells before we could light a LED. After 1 year of research, we can light a LED with 3 cells. We actually ran an Arduino microcontroller on 20 cells. And we've done more than 2,000 experiments, cataloging resistivity, voltage, resistance, all the electrical properties, and we keep it. I don't know what to do with it, but I wanted to prove to myself that a lot of these things can be extended. I'm not a chemist. I don't know jack about the theory of batteries and all those things. I'm just going from a complete novice point of view. But the point is I can still move this thing from nothing to something. That's my point. So that is what we have here. So the next slide. This slide is, you can see me measuring one of the cells, and it's actually hitting 1.30 volts. Actual, stable. You leave it for 24 hours, it's 1.3 kilovolts. So that's why when we stack like 4, we're getting 5.2 volts. Activation voltage of a blue LED is about 1.8. So the moment it passes that, the thing goes bright. Again, looking at something from a different viewpoint. This is what we all know, okra. It's okra. But you see, when you cut the okra across, you realize that the okra is a perfect pentagon, one of the platonic solids. Perfect pentagon. Now, embedded in it are spheres. And then you notice that it has a lubricant. Now, right? So you begin to ask yourself, what if a bearing was designed based on this principle? Bearing. Bearing is one of the most difficult things to deal with because they break down, will they work in space? Will they work in a vacuum? I don't know. But the okra, we eat it every day. Nobody looks at it that okra shouldn't be eaten. In fact, it should be worshipped, as it were, as our people did. They say the guy is worshipping okra because he kept the okra and kept looking at it and say, let this okra tell me something. Tell me something. What is your secret? Then they say the guy worships okra. And people laugh at him. Because actually the guy is way more advanced than the people laughing at him. So I'm just saying these things as like markers for the young people. How they can refocus their mind. We're just like the early birds in this thing, trying to figure things out. We haven't figured it out yet. So let's go to the next slide. So now I'm talking to my IT guys, guys into like me. Now we're looking at, everybody knows what this thing is. This is a yam ban, correct? Yam ban. The one on top is uku aku. Now, when we see the yam barn, we say the yam barn is just where they store things, which is correct. But storage, should it be restricted to food? This yam barn actually is a funny way because there's a way they tie it that the old yams come. In fact, I've been looking for who to teach me the tying. Because, no, it's not. We're trying to develop algorithms, whether we can have something called, something like more efficient hash tables you can use in computer design, right? So this is a yam barn, but it's called a hash table in computing. And then let me explain what I mean. I have to be a bit fast. So this is the way we hash table, right? What we call. An example, there's what they're called trees. Does anybody know binary trees here? Binary trees, computing, right? Good. A binary tree is a means of storing something so that you can access it faster than if you store it sequentially. Now, the binary tree is actually based on the actual tree, where each node branches out into two. Each node branches out into two. Each node branches, that's what they call a binary tree. So, but beyond the binary tree, they have an oak tree, which does a lot more. And then they have a hyper oak tree. All these concepts came from just analyzing a tree and then switching it into something that's totally unrelated. So you now look at the palm front. This is also a storage device. It stores kernels. It has spikes on it, which anybody who is versed in math will ask, can these spikes not represent vectors? Can one not design a vector storage system that mimics this thing conceptually so that we can have a more efficient retrieval or storage system in our databases? If you can do this, you may actually, of course, take over MongoDB. And anybody who is in IT knows I'm talking billions. But I'm just saying it as a conception of when you turn and start looking at your culture. So please, the next slide, because I'm running out of time. The next slide. So the third level of this Igbo cosmology is scientific research. Because scientific research thinks about doing things nobody had done before. That's the whole idea of R&D. You want to do completely wild things, things that you can say, hey, how did this guy do this? So under this, we're looking at, I'm trying to find what we may call equivalent relationships. That's what they call it in maths. They're not the same, the equivalent relationships, like Oyiria. So we see nature programming is what is closest to what we call rainmaking. Can you program nature to do what you want? Like saying, can I program a computer to do what I want? Now, if you have the possibility of programming a computer, then you can program nature. Why? Because it fits it to the Igbo fundamental axiom of connectivity. The question is, can you do it? Can you research on it? That's a secondary matter. Now, the other thing is what you call AI and prompt engineering, which is where we are now. Now, but this whole thing is like the definition, right? A lot of, because of course I've studied it in detail, the mathematical basis will blow most people's minds. That is just for sure. But it's not just the mathematics, there's also a spiritual dimension to the divination. So basically, you're feeding the human biocomputer input to give you a result. And it gives you the result in the exact binary system that we know. And this, one of the research papers I read was one Anthony Shelton that came to Nsukka in 1962, an American that went to Nsukka and studied, and they said they're going to teach him the lowest level. And if you see the report and the way, the system, the methodology, you say, wow, you couldn't have imagined that these people are this good. So, under this, we also look at something we call neuro-linguistic programming. Most programmers that program computers don't know about these things. Because these things deal with interfacing the human mind with reality, which fits into our axiom, but doesn't fit into their axiom. So this is what I say, the equivalent of what the white guy. So neuro-linguistic fits into neuro-linguistic programming. Now, this is something that became popular in 1978 and then continued. That is actually more of the Secret Service and all the top guys that use it. Most average, it's not even part of the school curriculum. But it's been there for a long time. If you're a researcher, you'll probably figure it out. So this is scientific research. But let me just explain what I'm trying to do here. Because once we say, Why are you interested in this thing? Equivalent relations and axioms. Like I said, I'm talking from a practical point of view now. Now, see, there is something we do in mathematics where if you have a view, like a plane crosses this building, takes a photograph of this building, moves further, photograph of this building, right? You can actually create equations that can extract the transformation that occurred. That if you put any point, it can tell you where the original point is. Though it didn't take those points before. It's a bit complicated, but it's there. Anybody who understands linear algebra and matrices and linear maps will understand what I'm saying. These are very serious things. In fact, the whole AI is based on this thing. I just talked now. So what we are trying to do is to find points of contacts between what the white man is doing and our local cosmology, right? If you can find sufficient points of contacts, meaning that you have two views of the same thing, now you can extract transformations, please, transformations, not in the mathematical sense, that enables you to map devices that people have already built back to their biological equivalent. So if they say there's a television set, and somebody said there's a guy in Osun State that he brings a bucket of water, and then he can see anybody he wants to see, even maybe pin him and maybe wound him, whatever they say. Now, this is an equivalence of a TV. Now, if you can, you don't need to do this, but if you can keep finding the data points, you notice that you can find transformations that can transform those physical things to their biological equivalent. And at times, this again depends on how you think about something. Like somebody can say, a plane is an object that flies in the air. That's a Western view of a plane. Now, a revised view of the plane is like, a plane is a device that configures air to carry load. It's a completely different view of the same thing. The plane reconfigures air to carry load. That's when you can put 800 kg on top of air. Yeah. You see, just that definition creates a completely different perspective in your mind. The other definition is a completely different perspective. So if a plane is a device that reconfigures air to carry load, then it means that there must be also an inverse device that can reconfigure the human body to withstand bullets. These are equivalent relations. Yes. I'm not saying that you should. So at least conceptually, if somebody says, no one go a day, intelligence should make you suspend judgment. Even if you don't agree, say, well, you never know. Leave it at that. Don't fight it. Because you may have very limited knowledge. So let me just go through the remaining slides. In the first slide is when our team went to one of our last visits to a rainmaker. That was about 6 years ago. We went to Gidi to find the Onyejisi, and that was, in fact, we were lucky on that day it was making rain. There was somebody who was having a burial, and they came and paid him to stop rain. Unfortunately, there was a bad guy downtown that felt he was supposed to have been paid, that this guy is like a junior, that if they came to the village, you should have met him first. So when we came there, we were lucky as we were talking. The man was sending a woman to the other man, say, see, if you don't stop what you're doing to disrupt my reign, I'm going to send lightning to your place. This is like life. It's not like somebody told me. So while he was saying it, I said, wow, this is interesting. Can you show me the lightning device? So, yeah, it's a device. It's a device. So we go into, you can see him pointing at it, and I went in, and there were 2 clay pots suspended on a wire. And he told me that those clay pots should never touch the ground. You can see him. That's me. That's the DB on the other side. They're pointing to me the lightning device. So I said, fine. Now, whatever he was doing, I was relating it to something like a Van de Graaff generator, electrostatic generator, for people who remember what it means. This thing can generate some crazy voltages. So I see 2 things that have 2 different polarities that shouldn't touch each other and shouldn't touch the ground. So fine. Of course, he didn't tell me the mixtures inside. But I am sure that we're dealing with a device, a biological device, an organic device. So, like I said, we are gathering data points with which to get an inverse transformation. That at the end of the day, we may even get to know more than him. Because he's actually stuck at the level at which he's operating. But more interestingly, before he was showing me this thing, he showed us leaves and what they did. He was just naming them. And then when I told them, how do you actually figure these things out? He says, here, you have to be in the spirit. For example, he kept about 6 leaves on the ground. So there's one of them called Ngongo na Ngongo. So which one is it? We are 3 of us. We kept on looking. All of us pointed to the same leaf. So he asked us, how did we know? That is, I put 6 leaves on the ground. I said, there's one called Ngongo na Ngongo. That is the name of it. I'm not kidding. That's what he called it. And you begin to say, this name is complicated. So the leaf must be complicated. At least that's the first intuitive response you have. So I pointed at the guy, but I said, oh, that's good. Then, after that explanation, the next slide. So we just took a shot with him, and the rain stopped, obviously, because the other guy calmed down. So we spent the whole day with the other rain. Then after that, he demonstrated Kola Nut Alpha for us. And I've never seen an accurate statistical analysis in my life that day. So, but, like I said, we don't have time. It's not really the issue. But one of these guys here is now in Canada. He's also a programmer. Because we have a bunch of people who really have gotten fed up with some of these Western things. So he was with us, and that was how it went. So the next thing. Now, in our worldview, this is our top physicist. This is a scientist. This is an Alpha priest that a white man took his photo in the early 19th century when he came to Igbo land. If you look at this guy and look at the people who are DBs on the web, can you understand that they are not the same type of people? All those digital web DBs, those people are completely hopeless compared to this guy. Now you look at him, even his pose, the closest pose to this is a yogi pose, a yogi squat. But look at how he aligns his hands and legs at the critical energy centers of the body. And then you look at the guy, and they make it like it's a laughing matter. It's not easy to be Dibianyanzu. It's not even in the realm of most people. That Nzu stands for purity. So people at this level don't commit crimes because the feedback will take them out. But this is the people we demonize. This man will not utter a lie. Some of them, if you come to their tongue, they split it in two. That they actually swear them. If they utter a lie, they will die. This is the people that people today condemn as herbalists, and then these fake new people try to give a bad name to a system that was almost intact. So anyway, so we go through that. Then the last one is, there's a paper that was published in Oka about, strangely enough, it was Volkswagen Foundation that funded the paper, about whether this audacious, whether it's true or not. So the professor in Nsukka wrote, Volkswagen Foundation, that he sent requests or questionnaires that anybody who knows that it's true should come, let him shoot him. And then if he doesn't enter, give him 1 million or something like that. So I'm wondering, why would I want to come? You shoot me if I did or did. I'm just saying, even if it were true. Who the hell are you? Is it that is to prove to you that what I'm doing is right? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. It's like if I'm willing, he said, if you know it's true, I should come. The guy has no incentive to prove it to you. It is you that want to go and check. So it was that process. This is the Biafra. These are like 4 ugiri shells. That's ugiri, bush mango. Sorry, 4 ugiri shells that are bush mango. Now, basically, on the purely physical level, if you throw this ugiri shell, it's going to go concave down or concave up. Concave down is negative. Concave up is positive. So the DBR reads a binary system of a hexadecimal number and uses it to reinterpret. Now, the only other aspect of this is that he has to be in a certain state of mind to be able to feed in certain information into this composure. So we are dealing with a biocomputer interfacing with a natural object. That's actually what we have here. And before the divination starts, the person they are divining for will have to touch this stuff to sample the guy's energy field and include it in the equation. That is just the simplest way to put it. This is just like an overview of what is happening. Like I said, I've investigated it in detail, so I understand what I'm saying. So the next view was, the next slide, please, was because of our research into Odeshi that took us, the guy was saying he did a questionnaire. If you want to research Odeshi, there are two places you head to. 82 Div, because they send them to Sambisa Forest. And the people they send are scared that they will die. So anybody that tells them if they do anything to me, that if they shoot me, I won't die, will go and find that information, true or false. So it becomes a first research. It doesn't mean if you want to research it. The next people to research, if you're interested, are SARS. The policemen have to deal with armed robbers every day. You have to make friends with them and then get information and begin to correlate it with hard data. It's not just talking, it doesn't work. That's not the point. So we had done our own research. This is one of the leaves that is used. The next slide shows you the pod that is used. Remember that this is a method that is used for everybody. But everything we collected fitted into the nature signature and the design of biodevices that could do that. So like I said, we are trying to gather information to help us generate an inverse transformation, not for this, but for you to be able to pick anything and then do the biological equivalent. I'm through. So, sorry. Then the last one is the final experimental pod. This contains an egg and contains the leaf and then some very insane procedures. That's where I end the lecture. Anyway. So that's my conclusion. Please, you can read it off the screen. Thank you.
I'm sorry, but that round of applause is not commensurate to the very powerful presentation you just made. Please. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Ugweze. I mean, Mr. Ugweze always delivers, right? Yes, a lot of things he said might not be just plain black and white, but like he said, it requires conscious and intentional research and studies to be able to, understand some of the things he said here. And I also like the fact that Mr. Ugweze always makes conscious efforts to match, technology and, our indigenous practices, which is actually the focal point of his presentation and this particular edition of Nkata. So let's give him another round of applause, please. All right. So at this point, we'll go into the moderated session where we'll get a moderator to ask Mr. Ugweze some more questions before we open the floor from the audience. So I'm going to invite the moderator for today. His name is Mr. Ucholisa Nge. He's a software engineer and the founder of FixLab, which is a software solution company that provides software solutions to, other companies. Let's give him a round of applause as he comes up stage, please. Thank you.
I know a lot of people have questions, like I have, or the first time I heard about this, right? So it's something that is very, very mind-boggling for you to kind of want to connect how all the things you see in the street that we call local really connecting or making more sense beyond what we already know. So while we wait for people to actually get questions, we'll be expecting you to write questions and pass back to us. I'll be asking a few questions based on what he already shared with us. So the first question will be, what is the difference between the Igbo worldview and probably what we call Western worldview? Because once you mention Igbo worldview, it's totally new to a lot of people, even personally, because I don't really know that there's anything like Igbo worldview. I just believe I'm an Igbo person and nothing beyond that. And how can we start to appreciate that there's actually how the old people, their standard and principle that they've used to live their life, up to the point that even some of them were able to find some of the things we call vegetables today. How many people after the old people know that there's another vegetable aside from Ugo or Ha? How is it that we cannot find any other thing if these people are not smart? So that is why I'm trying to see how do we connect, how do we make sense of these two different ideologies, the Igbo one and then the modern one that all of us that have probably gone to school are using today.
been trying to say throughout this session is that I'm looking at the worldview from a technical perspective. I'm not really looking at it from a cultural perspective. So it's almost like saying, I'm looking at it at the highest level possible. Because at different levels, people have all they believe in, their chi, and that's okay. But the fundamental Igbo worldview is based on connectivity. While the Western worldview is based on separateness. One is holistic, one is atomic. That's basically it. And either way you choose, you're going to discover different things. Certain things will be possible here, they won't be possible there, and vice versa. But they always correlates. It's like you have two views of a building. They are just views, but they may not look alike. So there's a reality you're looking at. And people have different views to reality. That works for them, yes. But each of them also has limitation because it's not the total reality. You can only view reality from a point. So even if you have 1,000 people, people can be from different points. But if you discard your view, and then you don't even understand the other guy's view very well. I mean, you weren't the grandson of Isaac Newton. So there may be some disconnect. And you always be playing catch up because you don't have any originality in your thought process. That's just what I'm saying.
Okay. So because of time, we'll be looking out for your questions. So before we get the questions up, right? The next question, sir, is in the Igbo worldview. So somebody can say that maybe a Dibia can probably connect to someone outside here, maybe whatever way it works.
Yes.
We know it works. Because we cannot, whether you are coming from a religious perspective or whatever, we know that this power exists. How do we actually connect that these two things, like picking up your phone, like everybody here that have a phone, forgets automatically that when you make a phone call, you can't explain what you are doing. But they call it phone, or they call it signals, or they call it frequency. But if the other guy does that, it becomes something, you start looking at him as somebody that is fetish. So how do we level the ground for everybody to start thinking in the other direction, that it's just that the other guy is not probably branded or polished?
You know, that was why I tried to describe this thing in levels, because you just can't jump from being programmed in English to being programmed in Igbo in one long jump. It's not possible. There are habits, there are patterns that you have formed. There are resistances in your subconscious that won't even allow you to accommodate certain ideas. That is why I said, for some of us that had been in the process for long, I deliberately left certain things to the very end so that it doesn't look like you really need to bother with that. So somebody has to first of all engage it at the level at which he can see. And then as he evolves and his interest evolves, he can now decide to connect these things. There's no other way to do it. You can't just come and run a lecture and everybody's now looking at Igbo worldview. It doesn't really work that way. People have to test the waters, like you're designing something with CBZ symbols. You're making some money. You're designing algorithms with pumpkin. It now gives you room to say, maybe I should investigate this in CBD more. I don't know what I understand. So it's like a trail where you leave a trail for somebody. Start from the simplest, making money, entrepreneurship. Figure out how to use what is in your local environment so you stop begging for money. So you solve that problem. Because even for me, I'm a mechanic. I was a mechanic full time. I had a laundry for 4 years. There's no way I can be researching this thing and be working in a bank. So all the while I've been doing anything. But most people didn't know that I wasn't doing those things. I just needed what to give me time. I didn't really need the money in that way. Just to give me time to keep doing what I'm doing. So it's a personal thing. So for many people, it has to be personal to them. And it's not something that if not that they call me, I really want to discuss it, because when I released the book Python and the Rainmaker, more than 30 of my friends deleted me from their WhatsApp. They said I'm not into juju. Classmates, old guys, 50, 40. People that you think were, some of them didn't even touch it. In fact, I would say, I came to Nkata in 2019. I had a manuscript. There's a professor of history, I don't know who he is, who I met. So one of our GDG guys, T-Boy, said I should tell the guys, let him review the book. When they finished, I came out, I showed him the book. He told me, no, it doesn't deal with that type of thing. And just rubbished me that day. I said, T-Boy, I didn't want to come and see these guys. I know how they think. You get what I'm saying? Just looking at the title was enough to almost raise all the subconscious reactions in him. And this is supposed to be like somebody who's about 60-something years old is reacting like this. So what do you expect somebody else to do? You see the point? So this is like a personal thing. Nobody's trying to change you to a dibia. It's not even possible. Most people can't even handle it anyway. So the thing is like, if your life is still working, fine, continue how it's working. Then if your life is not working and you reach the limit of your own axioms, then look for an alternative. But the problem is that the funny thing is that the intelligent people refuse to look at this thing. All the people that look at this thing are criminals, armed robbers, people that want to do money ritual. I don't know. So like, it now even makes us to move away more. You see the point now? And then only that negative thing is being propagated. And even when it doesn't work for them or it works for them, what does it matter? If you're an armed robber and you want to go and rob somebody, even if somebody says, if I rub chalk on your shoulder, they won't shoot you. It's better to believe in it than not to. After all, you're an armed robber anyway. What does it care? Anything that can help is okay. But it's not enough to develop a theorem, a conjecture, a proposition that can get to the bottom of it. You get what I'm saying?
Very interesting. So we're going to take some questions from the...
Sorry, just before we take questions from the floor.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. My name is Gideon Eze Chokwode. That means of God liveth. I want to thank our distinguished presenter today. In fact, this is the kind of teaching that younger generations of our kind need to know very well. And now my question is, I'm being bothered for some things. When we were growing up, those who brought new belief system to us brought that belief system on one hand and took our own belief system with the other hand, went home and then developed so many computer programs. That is in the language of our lecturer today. So many computer programs, leaving us here empty to enjoy the products and services of what they received from us here. Now, sir, I want to know, are there possible means how we can make a research on how to bring back this lost value? Because, for instance, why I'm asking this, sorry for want of time, why I'm asking of this, yes, I can't see, but I understood when you were showing the projection of how you visited some persons at Ogidi, how he showed you some very wonderful things like pots that could never touch the ground and is hanged. And these things are pure practical science that we can apply to make because, for instance, as I am now, I can't see. If there is any science that could make me achieve anything I could do with sight, even if I can't see, I will personally venture into it. And I know that until we understand our traditional science very well, we cannot achieve what the Western world are using to brainwash us or enjoy what we have. Thank you.
So let's take the next question. I think we have someone else raising their hand.
My name is Oji. I'm happy to be here. I've known the presenter for many years, though we rarely see, and I've read his book, The Python Forever. The Python. You see, what he presented to us is very, very interesting. However, his point of view, as he said, is from the technical aspect. But I think to understand and make progress, we have to see it from the spiritual aspect, from the mythical aspect. You see, in the mystic past, it was said, Africa was the most developed people lived in Africa. They were so highly developed that they couldn't even kill. So other tribes, other violent tribes came into Africa and killed them off. We have to, or our governments, organizations, our rich people, must have to invest money to go into the spirituality of Africa and Africans. You see, to become a medical doctor or whatever you say, or a computer expert, you have to be somehow imbibed, somehow initiated into the profession. And these are so-called DBS, so to say, they have been initiated. So we ordinary people cannot understand what they do. You have to get initiated, no matter what you have studied in your life, you have to get initiated. And like he said, you have to be spiritually clean. Your tongue must be clean. You don't lie, you don't do bad things, and that sort of thing. When we have a critical mass in our society, then we can start progressing. The Europeans progressed not because of the general masses, but because of certain people there who went into the second astral plane. There's a place, the second astral plane. I don't know, I hope some of you understand what I mean. And there, you see all the inventions that have made and inventions that will come later on. In years to come, you see all those inventions. And if they find you responsible, they can give the secrets to you. So we have to go to the spiritual part. That's where we came from. And from spiritual to technical, or we remain spiritual, and we don't need these technical things. We don't need a computer, the things are in our head. We don't need to invent anything. We can fly to New York, which is coming these days anyway. This gentleman can be here in Enugu and manifest himself in New York. You have heard of that technology coming up. So the technology that we are seeing today will sometimes merge. Like the spiritual and the technology will merge and become something else. So I think we'll have to talk again later. I don't want to, the time is against us. I don't want to talk so many things here. Thank you very much for giving the opportunity to talk.
Good evening, everyone. This is going to be a personal question, and I would really appreciate it if you give a personal answer. Shun worldview is just what you feel as a person. Do you believe we can reconcile various axioms, theorems, with regards to spirituality and learning? Like, it doesn't have to be just ours, it doesn't have to be just that of house as Yorubas. Do you believe that there is something that can unify every aspect of learning spirituality? That's my question.
Good evening, everyone. This will be very brief. So at what point do we begin to break the barriers of spirituality and enter into science? For instance, when very beautiful lecture first, very wonderful and engaging, I expected to hear about you quickly, and he mentioned it now. But now, when do we begin to break away from everything that is holding the religiosity and the spirituality that is holding the advancement of Igbo spirituality and enter into the real science of it? You talked about a research center or funding for a research center. At what time do we begin to move away from these barriers holding strong esoteric DBS from revealing this knowledge and begin to allow science to develop? Thank you.
My name is Muna. I'm very happy today for this lecture because I know Mr. Goethe very well. So when I entered, they say he's the one. I was very happy. And the most blessed people today are the kids. They already left. They don't know that they are blessed because most of the things he said, they don't understand it. They will get nothing from it now. But their subconscious has taken everything in. Sometime in future, one thing here may help them. It will just come up. They won't know where it came from. He already asked one question I wanted to ask, which is when do we start connecting the spiritual with the science? But the second question I have is something my lecturer then will call suspension of disbelief. How do we get the people suspend the disbelief of, come on, it's not possible? What do we do? Because if we don't get to that point, we won't even get to the point of connecting the spiritual to the science. Because this thing he said already was happening. If we study the life of Nikola Tesla, the father of alternate electricity, he was asked, how did you start thinking of wireless electricity and all these things you keep bringing out? And he told them, don't think I'm so intelligent. Things come to tell me things. This invention I do, some of them, when I sleep, when I'm in trance, something comes from other planet to tell me, do this, and I do it. Which means even the connection of science and spiritual has been happening. And we have our own spiritual realities. So we have to first suspend the disbelief that, oh, come on, these things are not possible. Oh, Christ said, Jesus said. How do we suspend the disbelief? What do we do? I think that's the first thing. Thank you.
Okay. Can I answer?
Yes, sir, please.
You can go on.
Okay. You see, when I'm listening to the questions, I always hear this word, we. I'm wondering who the we are talking about. You know, like, I get this impression that people are curious, but they are not serious. That's the word, they're curious. It's like a curiosity. This is very interesting. I'm staking my life on something. Sometimes it could take me out. People don't know how much I've gone through to get to where or whatever I've gathered. Even financially, even expense, even losses. Then somebody's telling me, what do we do? I'm not interested in you. I mean, let me be honest about it. It's not about you. It's about me. I am trying to resolve myself. I'm trying to redeem myself. It's just accidental that we're discussing it. If not for some, like, maybe some, just chance, I wouldn't be here. I'm not really so tripped about talking to people. I don't like, because I notice that people are just curious. You say something, just like in church, everybody says amen. They go home and steal. The pastor comes next day, he says the same thing, they do the same thing. And everybody is happy. The pastor is happy, the congregation is happy. So they have a perfect group. I'm not really into this we. What do we do to move science to? No. What do I do? And I think if many people could redirect that question to themselves, if you want to convert spirituality to science, don't tell me, oh, our great grandfather. How someone say, I get them before, no be property. Your great grandfather built the pyramid and you can't build a hut. Who cares? Who cares? Yeah, your father was so great in the past, but now you can't do anything. Does it not annoy you? You keep telling people about your history, about how great you were, about how people used to fly in the air. And then somebody is supposed to come and organize you so you can fly. In those days, if you can fly, you fly. If you can't fly, you remain in the farm. That's how it works. And as many people that can come up with that consciousness and engage themselves in the research and put their foot where their mouth is, it is only then that you begin to gain that critical mass. You can't be asking me to give you a solution that I don't have. Even the Dibia in the village, does he have all the solutions? Were the Igbo race perfect and then they were colonized? Was all our system working perfectly and we fell? It was the failure of the system that drew in the white man, not the other way around. The system had already degenerated before this whole colonialism came up. So at times people have to really shift their thinking about this whole thing. The white man did us this, the white man did us that. The sea separates us and the white man. Why didn't we cross over and colonize them? Is it not a fair sea? So if you start from the other side, it will swallow you. But if you start from here, you pass. So what is the idea of saying, what do we do? It is us that abandoned our statutes. And then this thing befell us. Individually, it is us that have to raise ourselves up. And as many individuals who take it up and do the work they should do, then you can now have that critical mass that can do something. So somebody talks about spirituality. Oh, the thing has to be connected. He's talking it in third person. Connect it. It has to be. It's future tense. Who is going to connect it? What do we need to do? What is your contribution to the thing? This is my own contribution. Imagine every other person contributed the same. Maybe it would have solved all this problem we're talking about. So I'm like almost like somebody who is saying, this is the little I've been able to do, and I'm still working on it. And I say, maybe you may be interested to look at this thing also. And then you can't go around telling other people how to convert them when you haven't sorted out your primary issues concerning it. So it's not as though that you don't want the world to change or something, but I think people don't really understand the kind of sacrifice and energy and effort required in some of those things. That's why they can sit down and say, the Igbos were great before. How do we? No, I don't think it's the right way to look at it. It's like somebody saying that the country is messed up. And then say the governor this. What are you doing about it? But you say, what do we do? Why are the Igbos keeping quiet? Who are the Igbos? What are you doing? So this whole collective we, I think people should eliminate it in problem solving. It should be like, what do I do? And I have said what I have tried. You can take a cue from there. That's the best I can do. I can't promise anything. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think this answer actually clears the air for for everybody. There's no extra questions basically at this point. It's just for you to go and pinch yourself, and then the questions start from you. Like me, I have to ask myself, where do I go from now? Right? So you ask the same question. That's just the takeaway from this discussion, and we appreciate everybody that showed up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Please, let's give them another round of applause. All right. Thank you so much for your patience so far. I believe that we've learned a lot, from the conversations, even from the questions that other people have asked here today. And I know that this is not the end of the conversation, definitely. I once moderated a book reading session with Mr. Ogweze sometime in 2021, where we discussed his book, Python and the Rainmaker. And it was such a beautiful moment for me. I learned a lot from that session. It was just for about 90 minutes or less, actually, longer than what we've had here today. So, and he's come back to the stage today to talk about some more things, even from the book and all of that. So please, the conversation definitely does not end. I liked what the man at the back said earlier. He said, Mr. Ogweze, we will still talk. So please, keep talking, okay? Just like it's not about what we will do, but what I will do. What you could do would actually be talking. Talk about this thing in spaces where it matters, right? And that could spur someone else up to take action. All right, at this point, I will call on the director to present, gifts to our speaker and the moderator.
Ifenia, please, I'd like to invite you to do the honors.
Thank you very much. Yes. The presentation, the first one, will go to the moderator. On behalf of the Center for Memories, conveners of Nkata Umibe, please accept this as a token of their appreciation for your participation in this event today. The very first one for this year. Thank you very much. Thank you. To our distinguished speaker for the February 2025 edition of Nkata Umibe, proudly sponsored by Ford Foundation with support from quite a number of partners. Ugoeze today spoke on the topic, Egbe Bere Ugo Bere, application of Igbo cosmology in science and technology. I believe we have been so enriched by being here today. We're grateful that the young ones also were mentored earlier, and they have benefited a lot. On behalf of the Center for Memories, accept this, Ugo, as a token of their appreciation. And congratulations on a wonderful session. I certainly benefited by being here. At least I know that we now have always had an Igbo worldview, and that we should be thinking about what do I do rather than what do we do. Very important. Thank you, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Feni. I'll hand over to Chukwudi.
All right, thank you so much, Chief Ben Etiaba, for handing over the gifts to the speaker and the moderator. All right, I'll call on another colleague of mine, Ms. Sifoman Namani, to give us a vote of thanks. But before then, immediately after she's done with the vote of thanks, we would gather here for the group photo and, the closing session. Please, after the group photo, you are allowed to network as long as possible before you go. One thing we miss out in spaces like this is networking. People just come and they go, and they don't make any new friends, and they don't get anybody's contact or something. Please find out who is in the same industry as you, who works in the media, who non-profit sector, who is a businessman or woman, connect with them, follow up with them, and that's how beautiful connections are built. Please don't joke with this information. I'm giving it to you for free, right? All right, so let's give a round of applause to Mwada Ifoma Namani as she comes to give us a vote of thanks. Thank you.
I hope we've been impacted by Mr. Ugeze's presentation today. Okay. I think the key takeaway is actually, for me, was what he said, last before he closed. So we need to be thinking about what I can do as an individual. Because when we say we, it's like, let other people do it. But then when you personalize it, then it means you are thinking hard about the problem, and you're thinking of how you can come in and how you can use your skills and your knowledge to make a difference. So thank you so much for coming out to join us today at the February 2025 edition of our monthly Nkata Umuibe. So I first want to thank our speaker, Mr. Ugeze, first of all, for accepting to be our speaker at Nkata Umuibe, because like he said, he doesn't usually do this. If you check him online, you will hardly find a lot of things about him. In fact, the picture that we even have to use for the design, we had to practically force him to take a photo. That's how, I don't know that he is. So it's such an honor to have him agree to be part of this session. And we cannot agree that it's been such an engaging and insightful and enlightening session. So, Mr. Ugeze, we cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much for being our speaker for February. I want to thank Uche Olisa also, our moderator for today, for driving the conversation and asking all the important questions, and also giving room for the audience to also participate. Then we want to thank, in a very special way, our funding partner, Ford Foundation. Like I explained during the intro, that without them, we would not have been able to kickstart Nkata again, but then they gave us the backing and the funding that we needed to start this program. Not just to start, but also start in a bigger and better way. So when people come in here, they say, oh, Nkata has really expanded and improved. It's all thanks to Ford Foundation. So we thank them so much for the support that they've given us. Then we want to also thank all our partners, our media partners and the other partners. Of course, in a very special way, we'll thank Afia TV, we'll thank Urban Radio, we'll thank Enugu Sports Club. These are people that have been with us from the very beginning when we were still very small, and starting out this session. We want to thank Solid FM, Mr. Uche Gabriel is here for all their support, with publicity for this event, and also for their support in different ways, giving opportunity for our speakers to come on air to talk about the program. We want to thank Signature TV. We want to thank Nzapi, who is our branding partner. So the merch that you see us wearing is all from Nzapi, and the other designs as well. So thank you so much. And we thank the community of people with disability. They always come out every month to join us, and we're happy that these sessions have been very impactful for them. Then the students also, some of them have had to leave because it's getting very late already. Students from Model Comprehensive, Claret, we also had God's Gift earlier, but they left. I think students from IMT are here. I'm not very sure. So thank you, Chief Ben Itaba also. He's always, showing up for us. He has spoken at Nkata Umuibe in 2020, but then every single edition of Nkata Umuibe, once he's in Enugu, he will always show up. So thank you so much, Chief Ben. And to everybody who took out the time to be here today, please, if I did not mention your name, don't beat me after this session, because I cannot acknowledge everybody individually. But thank you so much. We thank our board member, Mr. Nkemweke, who was here earlier, and the entire board of directors of the Center for Memories, not just for setting up the center, but also for the support that they give us, the staff on ground who do the work, and also for the staff. And then the volunteers, of course, we cannot do this. There's only so much we can do, but with the support of our volunteers, we're able to reach the sky. So thank you so much to our volunteers, the staff of the center, and to all of you. And as you go back to your homes and your various destinations, we pray that you get there safely. And we look forward to seeing you again in March 2025. And we'll be announcing our speaker for March very shortly. So thank you so much. And please, let's come forward and have the group photograph.